We'll see. That was the only thing that looked remotely like it would turn off sound. Is it gone?
I just joined. I'm sending likes.
Cool.
I'm gonna fill a little meter.
Thanks, Swiftly. Don't hear it. Anybody else hear it? Is it good? Are we good? Oh, snap. Swiftlet said knock on wood.
Oh.
It's bad luck if you don't do that, especially if someone did.
I'm gonna make you a rock star.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
That's fine.
Oh no, you don't gotta. Okay. Jackass. Yes! We've gotten rid of that dumbass sound. I want to know how it got turned on. I also want to know how a bunch of other notifications got turned on. And I was like, normally my system settings are all turned off, so I guess my system settings override the notifications all being on, but all of them were switched on. And I was like, I don't like being notified of things unless I am in the app. If I have accessed the app, I will be notified of it. But the only thing I get notifications on for is when someone sends me TikToks. That is a friend of mine on this app, and they send me cat videos. I want to know about it. Or, in terms of Hemlock, scenic skylines from Tokyo. Amazing. Anyway, that's the only thing. It's the only thing I want to know about. Okay, don't tell me about shit unless I'm in the app. So, it's the only thing I care to know about. I'm here, let's be real, here for the cat videos. Almost exclusively. Which, thank you always to everybody who always sends me cat videos. I think we got it, Denny. I think we got it. I think it's gone. We haven't heard it. I haven't heard it. No one else has mentioned hearing it yet. I think we've got it. I think we did it. What a relief. That was so annoying after you guys pointed it out. I could have gone my whole life not knowing it was there. But then you guys would have to live with that. And I didn't want you to do that. Not me sneaking in red panda videos between cats. You do that. It's fine. I like red pandas.
Red pandas.
I'm not going to complain about red pandas. Can we still get a chapter in? We could most definitely do that. Do we want to try and get a chapter in of this? Maybe two. Who knows? Do we want to do that? Shadow on the glass? Yes. I was hoping you'd say that. Nobody wants to hear my anime hot takes. What are we going to do? Anyway, I already gave it to you. Anyway. Chapter 6. Miss Church. William Grant made his way to the big red building just across from the music hall with haste and found the agency on the second floor. The place was not bustling, but that was the way with agencies as a rule, and Grant took that as no aspersion upon the company's success or standards. Indeed, it seemed that the entire permanent staff consisted of two women, one who sat at the reception desk in the small front office, and a second, a middle-aged woman whose manner betrayed extensive experience in service, who owned the agency and sat within the private office. He was ushered in this sanctum on declaring his business and offered tea, which he declined. "A nurse," said the owner, Mrs. Sedge, settling into her chair after the niceties had been observed.
For children?
No, well, I suppose you'd call her an invalid, although she's not bedridden. She's had a shock recently and just needs someone to keep an eye on her until she's right again. Mrs. Sedge took in his mild dishevelment and unshaven chin and nodded.
So, some hospital experience would be useful? We have a handful of ladies who would fit the bill, but...
She busied herself with a ledger for a few moments.
I am very sorry to say that they are all currently placed. We might have one become free at the end of the month, if that would be convenient.
Grant shook his head, considering inwardly that, by all rights, he and Lizzie should now be in France. It all seemed very unfair, all the more so because he could not quite quantify exactly what had gone wrong, only that something had gone truly, terribly wrong. That would be too long, I'm afraid. She needs to have a nurse as soon as is possible. I can't look after her myself, you understand. The patient, she's not my wife or family. She's a friend. It simply wouldn't be,
Proper,
finished the manager.
No, I understand entirely. It would not be at all proper.
I'm on tenterhooks just being away from her for this long, said Grant. I'm dreadfully worried.
What has the doctor said?
The doctor? Oh, a bed rest and a nurse, hence. He waved at the office.
Quite. I'm very sorry, sir, but there's simply nobody suitable for the needs of your friend just now. Or at least, not on our books.
She took a blank card from a caddy, dipped her pen in the ink pot, and wrote quickly.
This is the address of another agency. We maintain a friendly rivalry with one another and send on clients as the need arises. They may be able to help you.
She pressed it to her desk blotter and handed it over.
I wish you the best of luck, sir.
Grant left, clutching the card and nodding to the receptionist and wishing her a good morning as he did so, noting in passing that there was another young woman waiting on one of the guest chairs by the door. He was in the building's entry hall, nodding to the concierge, when he was brought up short by a cry of,
"Excuse me, sir,"
to his rear. The agency's other visitor, a young blonde woman, was hurrying down the steps behind him.
"Sir,"
she said on reaching him,
"I know it's beastly to eavesdrop, but the door was open a crack and I couldn't help but hear some of your conversation with Miss Sedge. You need a nurse. I do have testimonials, but I fear not enough to impress Mrs. Sedge."
She paused, very aware that she was committing all manner of social and professional faux pas in approaching him so directly. Grant, for his part, was impressed by her courage in doing so. Yes, I do need a nurse. Do you have any hospital experience? To be exact, have you ever dealt with anyone suffering from bad shock? The woman nodded decisively.
My previous employer, Mrs. Wright, she was in a train crash and it made a proper mare's nest of her nerves, if you'll forgive the phrase. I stayed with her almost a year until she was all square. You'll understand I can't talk about it too much for privacy's sake, but I have seen it all, sir, truly, I have. I'm sure I'm just who you're looking for, and if not, well, at least you'll have time to find somebody else.
That is a convincing argument, I admit. What's your name and your terms?
Amelia Church, sir, and 30 shillings a month, plus maintenance, uniform, and lodging on top. I keep full accounts, sir.
That was £18 per annum, plus whatever maintenance, uniform, and lodgings came to. More than he would have liked, but some bullets simply have to be bitten. Very well then, Miss Church. You may consider yourself employed to at least the turn of the month. Please come with me. I shall introduce you to your charge. Grant and Miss Church discovered Miss Trent standing at her dinner table, studying a stack of newspapers and magazines she had gathered from around her rooms. She looked up as they entered. "This," said Grant to Miss Church, indicating Lizzie, "is Miss Cerulia Trent." As he said it, Lizzie turned on him that oddly dispassionate yet threatening gaze that she had developed in the last few hours. It had the quality of a battleship turning its guns upon a fishing smack, and he did not enjoy it at all. She said nothing, however. He continued, "You will be looking after her?"
"Are you a nurse?" said Miss Trent. "I am," replied Miss Church. "I feel an urgent requirement to urinate, but this clothing is incomprehensible to me."
Grant would have said something, but his first impulse was to cry, "Lizzie!" And while he was strangling that impulse down, Miss Church said,
"Of course, dear." And then to Grant, "Where are the amenities?"
He told her, and Miss Church took Miss Trent away, chattering amicably about the weather as they went. Grant wanted to collapse into a chair or help himself to a whiskey and soda, but it was far too early in the day for that. And instead he drifted over to the table and looked at the stack of publications Lizzie had left behind, assorted magazines and old newspapers waiting to go out in the rubbish. They were arranged either side of the open newspaper in the middle, and he realized that one pile was of periodicals yet to be studied and the other of discards. She couldn't have been studying them so very carefully, however, as the discard pile was quite high, and he hadn't been out for so very long. On an impulse, he checked the dates. They were in perfect chronological order. She had arranged them thus in one heap, studied them, and then placed them into the discard. The efficiency of it impressed him, and he wondered what she was looking for. Presently, Trent and Church returned. The former seemed intent on telling Grant exactly how her ablutions had proceeded, but Miss Church cut across her with, "I don't think Mr. Grant needs all the details, my dear. In any case, that dress is hardly suitable for day wear. Let's see what you have in your wardrobe, and I can explain the niceties of how clothing works while we're about it." Miss Church guided her into her bedroom, and he heard Miss Trent say in a cool yet faintly injured tone,
"The fastenings are unnecessarily convoluted,"
just as the door closed. Miss Church's wages and expenses suddenly seemed a very great bargain to Grant. He also realized that he was thinking of his friend and colleague far more as Miss Trent than as Lizzie. Miss Cerulia Trent had been created as an unworldly woman possessed of otherworldly talents, distant and unknowable. It had been a role and nothing more, but Grant wondered if that were still true. Even as a character created for their enrichment, however, he felt sure that Miss Trent should know full well how to dress herself. What to make of a precisely expensive savage who regarded hooks and eyelets as a grave imposition upon her dignity, he had no idea at all. He looked down at himself and remembered how Mrs. Sedge at the agency had taken in his sadly curled jacket lapels and bird chin. He really did need a wash, shave, and a change of clothes. He went to the bedroom door and tapped gently. "Miss Church, I'm going downstairs to my rooms. I'm at number 2, by the way, to tidy myself up a little. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to fetch me."
"Very good, Mr. Grant," she replied through the wood of the door. "You take your time, if you'll forgive me for saying so. You seem exhausted. If you want to sleep, that might be wise."
She was right, of course. A few hours' snatched sleep in an armchair hadn't served to refresh him a great deal, and the thought of even an hour or two in his own bed was quite compelling. I may well do that. If I don't answer straight away, I'll probably be asleep, so knock harder if you need me.
I shall, but I wouldn't worry, sir. Get some rest.
Thank you, I shall. And so saying, he took his leave of the rooms of Miss Cerulia Trent. Grant was more grateful than he might have expected to be allowed some time to himself. He decided to shave before sleeping as he wanted a cup of tea, and if he was boiling the kettle, he might as well boil some extra water for the basin. As he waited by the gas ring, he considered one great element of the previous night's events that had until now waited in the shadow of Lizzie's, Miss Trent's, well-being. And that was how every bad feeling she had expressed about the session at Barking had come true, not least in Sir Johnathan's distinctly ungentlemanly behavior. Might he come after them in their Kensington fastness? Yes, he very well might, but not immediately, and Grant felt sure not at the head of a pack of his hirelings. This was, after all, London, not New York. Grant sighed. If only he had not been so stubborn and, yes, greedy. They might have been well on the way to the Côte d'Azur by now. As things lay, it might be necessary to find a bolt hole quickly, in case Sir Donovan's interest in them had not waned. He then stood by the window, enjoying his tea as well as the feeling of being rather more civilized after a wash and a shave, when he was surprised to see Miss Trent and Miss Church on the pavement outside, walking along. Miss Church was talking animatedly, while Miss Trent only listened intently, it seemed to him. He also noticed something else that disturbed him greatly. Lizzie was a good actor for all her lack of formal training, and had always instinctively understood that different people move in different ways. When she was Elizabeth Whittle, she positively galumphed along. Not the most elegant mode of deportment by any means, but one that spoke eloquently of her vivacity and of her early life in the East End. As Miss Cerulia Trent, however, she withdrew into herself, all but gliding along in a procession of tiny steps, and not a swing of her arms in evidence. The way she was walking now, however, was neither of these things, but rather a walk bland in its anonymity, a grand arithmetical mean of all strides. Lizzie was positively nondescript in that moment, and suddenly he truly couldn't think of her as Lizzie any longer. Miss Trent would have to do henceforth until such time as Lizzie Whittle was fully restored. Such thoughts rattled through his mind in the time it took him to button his shirt, throw on a tie, lace up his shoes, and grab his jacket and hat. Then he was out of his door and in pursuit. At first he feared that the couple of minutes it had taken him to prepare for the street had robbed him of his mark. But no. There were Miss Church and Miss Trent by the roadside, awaiting the arrival of an omnibus at a stop. He ducked into the doorway of a general store, wondering as he did so why he was being so secretive and continuing to ponder the point for some minutes while pretending to be absorbed in a display of Sunlight soap. Soon enough, he heard the rattle of the horse-drawn omnibus of the LGOC and slipped back out of the entry as he watched the two women board it. He flagged down a hansom and, giving the cabman probably the most exciting order he'd had that month of "Follow that omnibus," he settled into the seat, feeling faintly absurd as he did so. What in blazes did he think they were doing? Miss Church had never clapped eyes upon Miss Trent until a couple of hours before, and was undoubtedly doing what she believed best by taking Miss Trent out into the city in an attempt to ease her back into the mundane and workaday. Streets, buses, people, chatter, and bustle. Of course, that's all she was doing, and here he was, making a damnable fool of himself purely because... Why? Because Miss Church hadn't told him about it beforehand? That was all there was to it. He was childishly jealous that he hadn't been consulted. He was on the point of rapping on the cab roof to tell the cabbie that he'd changed his mind when the gentleman leaned down and cried sotto voce through the hatch, "Here, mister, it's stopping." And indeed it was, and more to the point, Miss Church and Miss Trent were disembarking. Grant instructed the cabbie to drive by and drop him 50 yards beyond the bus stop. Leaving the hansom and the cabbie gripping a fare that included a ridiculously generous tip to assuage Grant's sense of being absolutely ridiculous, he followed the women as he made their way along a thoroughfare marked by banks and other such worthy buildings of stone rather than brick. In amongst all the assorted rival temples to Mammon, however, nestled the public free library, and it was into this building that the pair went. Grant felt perplexity. Miss Trent had had her little library at home, and he knew that she hadn't read every volume. Perhaps they sought a rarer knowledge there. Perhaps, he wondered, Miss Church might want to see if there was any literature on Miss Trent's current state. Libraries must contain medical books, after all. That must certainly be it. Sensibly, he should have turned on his heel and gone back to his rooms to rest. Having gone to all this trouble, however, he felt a perverse desire to double down upon his actions, and so he followed them inside at a discreet distance. They did not, he noticed, head for the sections signposted to deal with science and medicine, and nor did they trouble to question any librarian. Instead, they went into the general reading room and thence, to his mild astonishment, into the newspaper archive. Pretending to find something entirely fascinating in the bound 1860 annual of Punch magazine, Grant found a shadowed corner, and from there observed Miss Trent and Miss Church as, largely under the direction of Miss Church, they sought out a volume of the Times and another of the Standard. These they placed on one of the reading tables, and, side by side, they began to search the pages. It was baffling to watch the pair diligently work their way through the pages in their own ways. Miss Church's head darting back and forth as she briefly noted each story before continuing on to the next, while Miss Trent just stared at the page as a whole before moving on. Baffling, but not a wildly exciting spectacle. And as the clock marked out the quarters one after another and the women returned volumes and took out new ones, Grant's attention wandered to the extent that he started to find 30-year-old political sketches in Punch involving people he'd hardly heard of strangely captivating. He turned a page and found a cartoon of a handsome cab driver calling to a passing gentleman, "Now then, sir, jump in, drive you out of your mind for 18 pence. Grant did not care for the cartoon at all. The cabbie was drawn in such a way that he found him sinister, and the horse, fractious and stamping, seemed thin and poorly cared for. It also made him feel belatedly guilty for stealing the hansom the previous night. Yes, his need had been great, but the cabbie had never been paid and had then been left marooned in the barbaric wilds of Barking. It was a poor way to regard a working man, all the more so when he had done them in the kindness of waiting to take them back. Although he had said he would wait in Barkingtown and return at 10. Why, then, had Grant found his abandoned cab in the lane not even an hour earlier? He glanced around the side of the bookcase behind which he had taken refuge and saw that the women were still methodically working their way through what seemed like reams of newsprint. He guessed it was perhaps intended to stir Miss Trent's memory, but it seemed a laborious way to do it. In any event, he didn't especially want the awkward questions that might ensue if they returned to the house and found him absent from his rooms, having necessarily arrived ahead of them. Besides which, he really was feeling very ragged, and his bed seemed a simply tremendous place to be at the immediate moment. He returned the Punch Annual to its place and left the library. On the far side of the road, he could see the omnibus already rattling away and decided not to wait for its successor. After all, he wasn't such a long way from home, and given the steadily increasing body of traffic, he felt confident that even should they follow him outright that minute, he would still beat them back, given they would have to wait at least quarter of an hour for the next service. Besides, he could shave time off by taking a more direct route down a couple of back alleys. It was in the very first of these less traveled back alleys that he was attacked. He heard a tread behind him, and reflexes sharpened by youthful fights in the Guinness of Manchester, he was already ducking to one side when a blow that would certainly have rattled his teeth and stunned him into a losing proposition instead glanced from just over his ear, sending his hat flying and himself sprawling. He was up again in a moment, much to the dismayed astonishment of his attacker, who, looking into Grant's eyes and seeing murder there, turned on his heel and haired off. Grant could see that pursuit was pointless and instead recovered his hat, simmering with provoked violence. He knew where to find that fellow when the time came. It had been Detective Sergeant Bradley's green plainclothes constable again, now apparently indulging in some rather more muscular policing. Either the lad had overstepped his orders, or Bradley had put him up to it with the intention of driving Grant off his patch. Either way, there would be raised voices at New Scotland Yard if Grant had anything to do with it. He hadn't actually broken any laws that he was aware of, and if Bradley thought he'd give in to that kind of strong-arm nonsense, Grant would be perfectly delighted to disabuse him of the notion. He touched the scalp where the blow had landed and found a shallow graze that was bleeding a little, promising himself that next time he saw the lad, he'd bounce him teeth first down a flight of stone steps. Grant continued to his rooms. A basin of clear water, a bottle of iodine, a comfortable bed, and a reclined seething while he considered exactly what he would say to Bradley when he saw him. Two hours later, after a train journey and a short walk, Mr. Lynch arrived back at his employer's mansion east of Barkingtown. Pausing only to hang up his coat and hat in the hall, he went straight to the study to report. Finding it empty, he looked into the drawing room, and there found Sir Johnathan Clay and three of the boys sitting around, smoking and reading the papers in a companionable silence. Seeing Lynch by the door, Sir Johnathan rose and beckoned to follow him into the study, where he sat himself behind the desk and said, "Well?" "Miss Trent seems to have taken on a companion, or a nurse or something, boss. Grant went out this morning to an agency and came out with her." Sir Donovan opened a foolscap notebook, took up a pen, and dipped its nub in the inkwell. "Name?" "No idea yet, but I'll find out. Took Miss Trent out to the free library after lunch." "The library? To do what?" asked Sir Donovan, writing notes as he went. "They was going through the newspapers. More recent ones, last 18 months or so. I didn't dare go close enough to see what they was looking at, mind you." "I really don't think she'd recognize you just from seeing you last night, Lynch." "It wasn't so much her I was worried about. Grant, he followed him along." "You should have said that they all went together." He started an addendum to his notes. "They didn't." Sir Donovan's pen halted. He looked up slowly, unsure if Lynch was playing the goat. "What do you mean they didn't?" "Two ladies came out first, across the road, and followed them to the omnibus stop. While I'm watching him from across the way, up turns friend Grant, and here's the thing, boss. He didn't join them. Instead, he goes off and skulks in a shop entry. Along comes a bus, he hails a cab and follows." Sir Johnathan gave him a very narrow look. "He was following them too." "That's how it looked. This Grant fella seems very protective towards Miss Trent. Perhaps. Sir Donovan mused for a few seconds before making another note. Continue. This is all very interesting. So, Grant follows him in the library, watches him too. He's watching them. I'm watching all of them. After a while, he gets fidgety and comes out. So I think I'll just see what he's up to. I told you to stay with Miss Trent, said Sir Donovan in the growl of somebody who doesn't take insubordination or incompetence calmly. I did, boss, said Lynch with the stolid complacency of somebody who knows his employer's wants all too well. I stepped out to watch where he went and hang around until the ladies came out again. Thing is, I saw someone else, some young fella I ain't never seen before. He follows Grant down the alley. Minute later, he's out of there like the devil on his coattails. I think Grant must have caught sight of him and realized he was being followed. Sir Donovan paused again from his diligent note-taking. You're sure you don't know this young man who followed Grant? Never clapped eyes on him before, boss. I'd swear on a stack of Bibles. Bit wet behind the ears to get clocked that easy, whoever he is. Anyway, so couldn't go after him because of Miss Trent, right? 10 minutes later, out they come. I reckon I knew they'd be coming back, so I walked ahead of them to the bus stop and boarded ahead of them. Sir Donovan nodded, satisfied. People don't tend to feel that they're being followed by people ahead of them. Just as expected, back to her lodgings. Barry was waiting around when I got there, so I handed the reins to him and came back to give you chapter and verse. Good. Sir Donovan took a few minutes to complete his notes, then sat back, pleased. Miss Trent is very important to all of our endeavors. It will be too bad if we can't find her when the time comes. Do you think this companion of hers might complicate matters? Lynch shook his head and curled his lip. Just a chip of a girl, boss. I could break her with my offhand. Sir Donovan nodded. Thought as much. It's Grant who's the problem. This other fella, the one who went after Grant, could be anything from a creditor to a cuckolded husband as far as we know. Probably nothing, but I'd prefer to know for sure. If only for the removal of doubt. I don't care to be taken by the lead, you understand. Not now. We're so close. He noted the slightly sour expression on Lynch's face and laughed. I know. It's one thing not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but when the horse hasn't even turned up yet. I think we're permitted a little cynicism and caution. I don't trust them either, Lynch. But at the same time, I have an odd feeling that they can't actually lie. That it's beyond them. Not an iota of proof of that, mind you, but I've yet to catch them even in a white lie of convenience so far. That's true of our guest, too. Now Sir Donovan seemed less assured. That one, I don't know. We shall just have to trust our sponsors to have a better grasp of it than we do. He looked seriously at Lynch. We are taking a huge risk. That much I know for a certainty. Lynch shrugged. Worth it though, isn't it, boss? If we get it wrong, well, we won't have long to regret it, will we? But if we get it right. And here, he smiled. A moment later, Sir Donovan smiled too. These were the beatific smiles of men for whom the near future promises the realized fruits of their every dream, and may the devil take the hindmost. And that is the end of chapter 6. How long is chapter 7? 16? When did we start? 9? 9? we could maybe get away with another chapter. Maybe. It's only been 20 minutes. Do we want to try and get through chapter 7 too? Get through 2 chapters? You vote no? Might be a good idea. We might be pushing it. We would have a little... It would be... If it took almost the exact amount of time, it would be... We would have like 10 minutes left. What do we think so far? Do we like it? Do we like the book? Is it fun for you all? At least we don't have that godforsaken fucking chime going off. Me too. I kind of hope look, if this doesn't have a sequel, I'm gonna be upset. I like the universe. I like the time frame that's set up. Mainly because spiritualism in like early London was like a very fun time. And I like that it's just two crooks playing a confidence game, and they just it results in this whole convoluted mess of I'm gonna be real, it sets it up for a sequel, and if there's not, I'm gonna be upset because there's not really been mention of a sequel. But I'm hoping that they make one. Normally I mention if something is part of a series, but we don't know if there's going to be a series for this. To be perfectly clear. But it's a very fun book, and I like it a lot. Yeah, there was a lot of internet stuff. Like, you could, like... Now, there's like high regulation of scams online. There used to not be. There was just no laws against scamming people on the internet. So if you liked like foregoing Amazon entirely or any like big box internet store, like if you found like a product, even for just software or anything on the internet, that you had to purchase, there was no guarantee you weren't just gonna get screwed out of your money. And there was no recourse for that. None. Like any internet crime that you took to the police, they were kind of just like, what do you want us to do about it? Like there was no regulation on crime for the internet at all. And it is very it's like the second phase of that. Yes, there's so much territory in which it was just the wild, wild west of stuff. And spiritualism is one of those things where it was just like, yeah, they were just allowed to do that. Coercion wasn't like a thing. You know what I mean? Like if you agreed to something, you agreed to something. It didn't matter if you were under duress or if you were misled. It didn't matter to that. All that matters is that your name was on paper somewhere. Litigation still hasn't caught up to today's terminology. Yeah. No, it really hasn't. There's a whole topic that I do not want to get into in TikTok, but which I find very disturbing about early internet stuff. Do you know where I'm going with this? Yeah, no, because I've watched a couple of documentaries about it, and it's insane. I don't want to talk about it on TikTok. Mostly because TikTok will strike this live down where we stand. But that was terrible. This would be a great Discord discussion for sure, but we can't get into it on here. But Discord later. But there's just so much stuff that you could get into. Even like, because there used to not be places to get stuff that was even. There was a time when Walmart did not have a store on the internet, right? Like there wasn't store, like you couldn't purchase something in a shop online, and like companies took a while to catch up to that. Regulation took a while to catch up on that. And like, say you wanted something on the internet, you could very easily get scammed and nobody would like take that seriously. Now that type of thing, like you can report it to whatever site. You can report it to the Better Business Bureau. You can report it multiple places. And especially if it's a scam on money, they'll take care of it if it's money related most of the time. And especially if it's a big corporation. Like if you don't get an item from Amazon, they're gonna refund you. But there's like stuff like that. You can still do that. Like on eBay, like you can still get scammed on eBay. Now eBay will strike that account down if you contact them, but they didn't used to have maintenance for stuff like that. They didn't used to have customer service for things like that. And in almost equal measure, now I feel like the big threshold now for us in terms of not necessarily scams, but in like wild west territory, is data transfer. How many websites are it's like, we can authorize by clicking this, you're authorizing us to sell your data, and you have to agree to that to partake in certain social media platforms. So TikTok, one of the whole reasons TikTok is quote unquote being banned is because they're afraid of what? Data transfer. There's no regulations on data transfer, especially not among US companies. They don't care which companies have your data. All companies have your data. Every large corporation has mountains of data on each and every one of us, almost like it's an afterthought. And there's no regulation on that. Sure, there's stuff where it's like, you can subscribe to whatever and then we'll take you off data list. It's like, yeah, but then you also have record of my... But it doesn't... It's the wild west of data collection. And that, I think, is going to be the next big thing. How much malware can you cram in a chain message? Answer all of it. And I also think that in terms of on like a step down from that, well, a few steps down actually, because I think data is like the big thing, but I also think in terms of personalities on the internet, I say, as a personality on the internet, interactions between creators, especially like, okay, I don't want to get too into the weeds on this. It's just something that I've been kind of following along with and find very upsetting personally. There is a certain creator that I followed for a long time on this app that I was a big fan of until a few months ago. And I'm not going to go into the weeds on the entire thing, but they ended up advocating for some things. And someone went in and found another one of their accounts, which is listed as public, on another social media platform, and found out that they supported some people who were maybe not as tolerant of people in other marginalized groups. and was posting on their account receipts of this person following those people, and that's all they put out there. And they responded with litigation, and also then doxed the world. Not, they didn't dox them, but basically threatened to, by just sort of letting them know where they lived by sending a wellness check with the cops, kind of like an FYI of like, oh, well, I know where you live. And it was kind of like a thinly veiled threat. And it was pretty obvious, but now there's litigation involved. And they're going to court. Them and another podcast that was covering all this, that was just covering it. And like, they were a discourse channel. Under free use, you can, if you're a commentating channel, or like a tea channel, or a drama channel, or whatever, and you take that content and then you add discourse to it, it's considered not your work, but it's considered transformative, and that is fine for you to use. Like, that's legal. Then they were also, a podcast that was covering it also got dragged into this litigation because they were talking about it, and they didn't want them talking about it. So now it's like two people in a litigation that then got 3 other people on a podcast dragged into it just by talking about it. And then it's like, I feel like, one, there's gonna have to be some sort of protections for people's personal information. Like doxing, for instance, that's almost borderline. It's because it's not considered a crime.
Nope. But swatting is.
Right. But doxing isn't. Like, just putting someone's address, phone number, what have you, on the internet is not even considered a crime.
Nope.
They're like, what do you want us to do about it? And I'm like, could you not see how that could be dangerous? Especially if you have millions of followers. That's pretty dangerous. Because no matter how much people follow you or like your content or like do anything, there's always, for every 10 people that like you, there's going to be at least one that doesn't. And that's just a byproduct of existing, right? So you got to think, for all the thousands of followers you have, or like however the millions of followers you have, there's going to be like 1,000 that hate you at least, like, right? Just, if not for any particular reason. There doesn't even have to be a good reason. You can just not like somebody to not like them. But then if you give people ammunition to not like you, say you've made insensitive comments or like come out in support of something terrible, I don't know, you're damning yourself, right? And they kind of know that. And so then, even to just dox those people who purposely rage bait or anything, that's still dangerous to them. That should still be a crime, right? Because you're still leaking someone's private information, but that's not a crime. You can totally do that. You can totally do that.
The sound is still there.
Is it?
I've heard it twice now, at least.
I turned it off. How has it not been going off this entire time and then it went off?
I don't know.
I turned it the fuck off. I thought we were good.
I thought so too.
Just happened.
But I've heard it twice.
Yeah, even just fanatics. I don't know how it's returned. That's so fucking annoying. But even just fanatics in general, it doesn't take a whole lot for people to... Well, that's... I don't know. Maybe it goes away while I'm reading. Should I read some more? But even doxing people... Doxing shouldn't... There should be protections for that. But there's not. And also then, for you to dox somebody and then go right around the back and like, oh, I'm suing you now also. How are you suing me? Like, that's the craziest bit. Is I'm like,
Yeah, you're being
I
sued
feel
for
like
slander.
there's a wrong end of this. Yeah, like you could, but that's the thing, is like, that's what's wild about social media in general, in when you put yourself on a platform as a character or as an individual or as a personality, and even if you aren't doing it because for a lot of people it's their job, right? They've made money doing that. They've quit their day job. Their whole job now is making content for you to consume and do those things, and that's their livelihood. Not only does that threaten their livelihood, but they, by all accounts, probably didn't start their platform with the idea that it would become a job, maybe. They were doing it because they enjoyed it, right? So then to take this thing that was just supposed to be for fun, supposed to be a moment of reprieve, if you will, because, and maybe I'm solitary in that because, like, I've only ever been on the internet for fun. I only ever want to cosplay for fun. I feel like if I turned it into a job, it would lose all meaning, and then I wouldn't enjoy it no more. And I feel like even if reading to people was my whole job, like if someone paid for me all day to read, actually, you know what? I feel like if I could read to people
And
all
just
the
stock
time,
up on your fucking lemon honey tea.
yes, but I feel like in terms of like editing or something, like if I had to edit it all day, I would fucking lose my mind. I do have to edit all day. It fucking blows my mind. But it does make me go insane. But that's the thing, is like, if I was doing that, like if I had deadlines and it was my job and that would terrify me. So like, even then, and some people don't even have it as a job. Some people have been doxxed on the internet just for playing around and having fun, streaming video games, or talking about stuff, or like, most people in general don't have a platform in a sense of like, oh, this is my job. They have a platform in the sense of like, oh, this is what I do for fun. And then to have that fun thing just pulled the rug out from underneath of their fun relaxation project. I couldn't imagine. That's so upsetting. Like, I'm gonna be real, Tuesdays are my favorite day of the week. I like reading to you guys. I have a fun time. I always dress up really nice, and Tuesday's the only time anybody ever sees my outfit. So, also, no one else appreciate this. I go nowhere. I just walk around my house like this. You guys are the only ones that get to see it anyway. But I have a lot of fun on Tuesdays. I get to talk with people about the books. And no one ever wants to talk about books with me. You think Dave listens to me about the books I'm reading? No. He has no idea what's going on. Nobody does. But I get to tell you guys about the books I'm reading. You guys are interested. And you like it when I read to you. And you like it when I talk about anime hot takes that nobody else would entertain. But I have fun on Tuesdays. And when I think of like, if someone hated me enough to do something like that to me, I almost certainly would stop. I would have to. And that would bum me the hell out. Because then I'd lose my favorite day of the week. And then to like not be able to talk about it. Because now they're in a lawsuit, so now they can't say shit about it right now. Because anything they say, it just adds more fuel to the fire. So then you're like, well, how do I deal with this when both creators now view this as a job? So now it's like, well, we can't address the elephant in the room that everybody wants to hear about. So then, anyway, it's a whole big deal. And I feel like soon we're going to have to see protections for information like that, or litigation that can be, that would be considered a threat. Because right now it's not. And I think that's so crazy. Isn't that crazy? It's not just me, right? I think that's absolutely insane. Yet, I'm glad that you don't, because I was afraid when I was like, hey, everybody wants eyeglasses chains now, and so for a hot minute I was like, I need to stop wearing these on stream. Because we're just giving Corey an egregious amount of business. I don't want you to have to make a bunch of eyeglass chains. We still have litigation focusing on pagers. It's going to be a minute before they get to social. Oh, for sure. No, I'm not seeing this as changing anytime soon, but I do feel like it's something that's going to get very real in the near future. It's going to become enough of a problem where it's going to have to be brought up in discussion. Yeah, make Nody donate to someplace. Nody will... It's going to take an act of Congress. It may have to. Because in terms of like data safety protections, we have some. Now, right? It took us a while, but we have data security for stuff like your taxes, for stuff like credit card numbers, for stuff like online shopping. We have protections for anything to do with money. So we're going to have to move along to personal safety at some point, at some juncture. They aren't really enforced. No, but the best part of that, well, not the best part of that, but the main part of that is all, at least there's reputable businesses that will, or at least outside companies that will, like PayPal. Like you can go through PayPal, and PayPal is specifically there to protect your information, so that you can pay for stuff on the internet, and it goes through PayPal and not through your own personal bank information, right? Because not every shop is going to protect you from that, but most larger businesses will. And even then, a lot of smaller businesses do too. Not to say nothing of like TikTok shop, but if I find a creator on here that has like a TikTok shop, I'm just gonna go to their website.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave TikTok. I'm gonna go to their website, like I did with Birds of Valhalla. Like love that site. I need another car air freshener. I like that thing.
There's more sense on their actual site than there is on their TikTok shop,
See,
too.
the thing is that I don't experiment with scents. And once I find one I like, I'm
No,
like, that's
but,
my thing.
but what I'm saying is there's more options on their
There's
site.
definitely more options on their site than there are in the TikTok shop.
Yeah.
And if I find someone I like that makes stuff, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to go there. And I like that a lot of smaller businesses are gaining recognition for stuff. Like Juvia's Place started on TikTok. And now they're in Ulta. And now white people are complaining that they can't use it because it's too pigmented. And I'm like, it's not for you.
That's why. It's not for you.
It wasn't for you.
Not everything has to be
Not everything
for
has
white
to be
people.
for you. If you want to support it and get stuff, use less. You don't have to... Sorry. It makes me mad. I'm really glad that brand took off. And they should. They should. But there's plenty of smaller businesses also that will do their fair job of like protecting your information where they can. But like not everything is... We don't treat personal safety the same way that we do property or money, and that's not... We can't keep that up.
That dog won't hunt, Monsignor.
Especially when you think of a lot of things getting easier. Anytime we... like... anytime we structurally regulate new data protection. There are always going to be people on the back end that are looking to circumnavigate that. That's why, for all intents and purposes, we have great protections for software in place, and yet you still occasionally get text messages that say that USPS can't deliver your package and they need your information, right? There's still circumnavigation for everything. And it's only gonna... And it's only going to keep happening, right? But if we don't do anything in terms of personal safety, over 60 insurance text messages a day right now. Jeez. But yeah, like, we do still need personal protections. And I think that's gotta be on the way, even then. Especially because, like, you think there are personal protections for some people. Celebrities, for instance, whenever their information gets leaked or stuff like that, stuff happens, but only with them. Just like on TikTok, like if you go to report an account, like say someone's stealing someone else's work, posting it on like an alt account or whatever, that looks kind of like the original, but it's not the original. And you start seeing copycat accounts of popular people. Not celebrities, popular people. And then you're like, wait a second. That's not them. That's not their username, because you follow the original. That's why it came up on your For You page, because your algorithm dictated that you might like this content, but it's the same content you already follow. So then you go to the page and you're like, wait, this isn't the actual creator. And just to make sure, you go look up the original creator. And there it is, side by side, the original account, underneath it, copycat account. And you're like, so you go to report the page, but they're not a celebrity. They're just a popular influencer. Say maybe like just under blue checkmark worthy, right? You can't report that account. You can post that they're pretending to be someone, but the only options are celebrity. Why can't you report regular people for maybe pretending to impersonate another person's account? But you can't do that. They could very easily have a function where you could type in someone's username. No, it doesn't. It only comes up if they're a celebrity or a high-profile person. Why? When you're licensed and your number is attached to the license as public info. I was not informed of this until after I was licensed. Oh no. That would have been nice information to have beforehand. There's a Facebook page that is a spoof of mine, but no. Yeah, stuff like that. But you can't report that. And if you do report it, if you do find a way to report it, no action is ever taken. Unless literally you flood customer service. And I mean flood it. There has to be thousands of reports for someone to even take a look at it. Same for people who get hacked. Like, there's a lot of quote-unquote popular pages or people that get hacked and they can't get their account back. And it takes a lot of doing to just be able to do that. If you're a celebrity, though, fine. High-profile person, you're fine. But if you're just a popular personality on the internet, no. Oh well, guess you'll have to make a new account. Like, it's that. And that's not. You're entitled to your work. A band I follow had their page on FB hacked and they had to get a new one. They couldn't get it back. Yeah. Like, there should be more protections for that. But there's not for regular folks. Which is unfortunate. Anyway, it is almost getting time to go over to Discord and play some more Control. And we should do cat facts before that, before Lady Aoife has to go. Are we good with that? Are we good with cats? What am I asking? Are we good with cats? Of course you're good with cats. Strap in, everybody. We're doing the Somali cat today. Okay. The history of the Somali breed, which is considered a long-haired version of the Abyssinian, is a bit murky. Some believe that the cat's long hair was a natural mutation of the Abyssinian breed, but others think that the lack of breeding stock in the early 1900s led English breeders to introduce long-haired cats into their breeding programs in order to keep bloodlines going. Either way, the long-haired cats began gaining popularity in North America in the 1960s, when a breeder named Evelyn Magoo dubbed them Somalis. There was a nod to Somalia's shared border with Ethiopia, the birthplace of the Abyssinian. With its large ears and eyes and soft, bushy tail, the Somali is sometimes called the fox cat. It has a ticked coat, meaning that each individual hair has bands of different colors, with darker colors contrasting with lighter shades. The coat comes in 28 different color combinations and is usually darker along the spine and the tip of the tail. The fine texture of the hairs makes the Somali softer than other breeds. Its appearance isn't the only fox-like characteristics of the Somali. Like a wily fox, the Somali is clever and mischievous, much to the chagrin of its human companions. It is energetic and requires plenty of time to play, and while it is friendly and affectionate, prefers to simply be near its humans rather than on a lap or cuddled in a pair of arms. But this fox cat will bring kitten-like energy to a home until old age. Look at this baby. Oh. What an adorable baby. Anyway. Well, had sort of a rocky time today. We will explore avenues for a different stream here in the near future. Keep an eye on the Discord. I'll probably let you know how Lemonade goes, and if that works out, and we will proceed from there. If Instagram is preferable for other people, we'll talk about it. Anyway, we'll have a vote. Something will happen. We'll do stuff. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a great week. We're going to go ahead and move over to the Discord for some Control. Dad, do you have any parting words of wisdom for us?
I did. Give me 1 second. An apple a day keeps anyone away, provided you have great aim.
Get really good at shooting people with apples. That's Dad's advice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you next week. Tuesday, 8 Central. Hopefully here. Maybe not. We'll see. I'll let you know. You all have a good night.